Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Kapendra from Kirodimal College, University of Delhi. Today we are going to discuss about a module pollution, ecotoxicology and biomagnification under paper Ecology. So students, let us see what we are going to learn in this module. After studying this module, you shall be able to understand ecotoxicology and biomagnification. List the major type of ecotoxicants and their sources. Describe effect of various toxicants on terrestrial and aquatic systems. Know the effect of toxicants on human health. Understand various human activities resulting in environmental toxification and deterioration. Describe causes and consequences of biomagnification on various organisms and also on human health. Ecotoxicology specifically deals with the interactions, transformation, fate, and effect of natural and synthetic chemicals in the biosphere, including individual organisms, populations, community, and whole ecosystem. The main reason for measuring the ecological effect of chemicals are to predict how toxic substances are likely to impact ecological system. Various tests are done to chemicals prior to their release into the environment and to existing chemicals for which actual effect is still unknown. To assess various changes occurring in ecological system, understand the influence of released substances, so to assess the environmental risk of the chemicals. Environmental toxicology, functions described by environmental toxicology. First, fate and transport of chemicals in the biosphere and the living organisms which are released into the environment. Second is the interaction of the material with which the site of action. Impact of molecular interaction of toxicants upon the function of the ecosystem. There are many sources of toxic and hazardous chemicals in the environment whose route or method of exposure and its persistence in the environment, as well as characteristics of the target organism that determine the danger of the chemical. The dose, entry route, duration of exposure, and sensitivity of the organism all play important roles in determining toxicity. The figure explains the factors in environmental toxicology. The first is factors related to toxic agents that consist of chemical composition and reactivity, physical characteristics, presence of impurities or contaminants, stability and storage characteristics of toxic agent, availability of vehicle to carry agent, movement of agent through environment and into cell. The other factor is factors related to exposures, which includes dose, route, rate and site of exposure, duration and frequency of exposure, time of exposure. Factors related to organisms, resistance to uptake, storage or cell permeability of agent, ability to mobilize, inactivates, sequester or eliminate agents, tendency to activate or alter non-toxic substances so they become toxic. Concurrent infections or physical or chemical stress. Species and genetic characteristics of organism. Nutritional status of subject. Age, sex, body weight, immunological status and maturity. Types of ecotoxicants. There are more than 200,000 man-made organic compounds, and toxicity of most of these compounds are not yet known. Broadly, the chemical agents can be categorized into two types. First is toxic chemicals. These includes pesticides, heavy metals, oils, and petroleum products, domestic wastes, industrial wastes, and radioactive substances. Toxic compounds affect individuals' health by affecting various physiological processes and pose a threat to the ecosystem. Second is hazardous chemicals. Hazardous chemicals generally include various flammable substances, explosives, sensitizers, irritants, acids, and caustics. Xenobiotic substances are those which are foreign to a living substance. Distribution and fate of toxic substances. There are number of ways through which toxic materials enter into body of living organisms like water, air, food, accidental exposure, and several other means. The solubility of the toxic chemicals determines the movement of toxic in the body of living beings. Some of the toxic chemicals are persistent for longer duration in the environment like CFCs, chlorinated hydrocarbons, pesticides, etc. The toxicity can be categorized as acute toxicity due to single exposure to chemicals and chronic toxicity due to prolonged exposure of sublethal dose. Dose-response relationship. The dose of the chemicals determines the extent of an adverse effect of toxic substance on an organism. The dose-response relationship is used to examine the time-dependent effect of exogenous and endogenous chemicals and physical agents. Dose can be defined as the amount of toxicant per unit of body weight to which an organism is exposed. The dose response is a quantitative relationship which recognizes that the effect of a certain chemicals depends upon the concentration of the toxic factors. The dose dependency can be shown with the help of dose-response curve. Generally, the dose-response curve is S-shaped. The dose corresponding to the midpoint is the statistical estimate of the dose that kills 50% of population and is returned as LD50. The dose-response curve may differ among different kind and strain of organisms, type of tissues, and population of cells. Effect of toxins. The first is teratogens. Teratogens are chemicals or other factors that specifically cause abnormalities during embryonic growth and development. Thalidomide is the most commonly known teratogen. It is a sedative drug used by pregnant women which causes abnormality in developing embryo. It leads to a condition known as phocomelia, in which a baby develops seal-like limbs. Perhaps the most prevalent teratogen in the world is alcohol. Drinking of alcohol during pregnancy can lead to fetal alcohol syndrome. It is a cluster of symptoms including craniofacial abnormalities, delay in fetal development, behavioral changes, and mental retardation. Moreover, only one alcoholic drink per day during pregnancy result in decreased childbirth weight. Another second one is carcinogens. A carcinogen is a chemical or other factor which causes cancer. There are number of elements or chemicals in the environment which are carcinogenic. It includes synthetic chemicals, radiation, air pollutants, heavy metals, smoking, chewing tobacco, etc. The carcinogen can be biological, chemical, or physical agents. The biological agents include retrovirus, HIV, etc. The chemical agents includes nitrosamines and polycyclic hydrocarbons. Xenobiotic chemicals are also act as carcinogens. The physical agent includes ultraviolet radiations and ionizing radiations. Mutagens. Mutagens are agents such as chemicals and radiation which causes sudden and permanent changes in the genetic material of living organisms. This can lead to birth defects if the damage occurs during embryonic development. Later in life, genetic damage may trigger neoplastic growth. When damage occurs in reproductive cells, the results can be passed on to future generations. Number of chemicals, pesticides, radiations is mutagens. Chemicals frequently react with DNA are generally mutagens and also act as carcinogens. Allergens. Allergens are those substances that activate the immune system. Formaldehyde is one of the most common examples of widely used chemicals that act as a powerful sensitizer of the immune system. Formaldehyde concentrations in indoor air can be thousands of times higher than in normal outdoor air. Some people suffer from sick building syndrome characterized by headache, allergies, chronic fatigue, and other symptoms caused by poorly vented indoor air contaminated by mold spores. Carbon monoxides, nitrogen oxides, formaldehyde, and other toxins released from carpets, insulations, plastics, building materials, and other sources. Endocrine disruptors. These are chemicals that disrupt normal hormone functions. In some cases, very small concentration, even in picogram, may be enough to cause developmental abnormalities in sensitive organisms. Because these chemicals often causes sexual dysfunction, that is reproductive health problems in females or feminization of males. These chemicals are sometimes called environmental estrogen or androgens. There are a number of compounds like phthalates, alkyl phenols, organochlorine compounds, and polycyclic hydrocarbons are exoestrogens, fall in sperm count of male, and rise in hormone-related cancer such as breast cancer are probably due to environmental estrogen. Neurotoxins. Neurotoxins are a special class of metabolic poisons that specifically attack neurons. Different types of neurotoxins act in different ways. Heavy metals such as lead and mercury kill nerve cells and causes permanent neurological damage. Anesthetics and chlorinated hydrocarbons disrupt nerve cell membranes necessary for nerve action. Organophosphates like malathion, parathion, etc. and carbamates inhibit activity of acetylcholine esterase, which is an enzyme that regulates transmission of nerve impulse between nerve cells and the tissues or organs they innervate. Most neurotoxins are both extremely toxic and fast acting. Effect of toxicants on human health. Large amount of toxicants or pesticides are taken by humans through ingestion, inhalation, or absorption through the skin. These toxicants usually affect one or more organs like lungs, skin, or alimentary canal. Toxins, when absorbed in the body, are metabolized, transported, or excreted. During the metabolic process, they have adverse biochemical effects and causes manifestation of poisoning. These processes are characterized by kinetic phase and a dynamic phase. In kinetic phase, a toxic substance may undergo absorption, metabolism, temporary storage, distribution, and excretion. When a toxicant remains unchanged during the metabolic process, it is available for further biochemical interactions as an active parent compound. Some toxicants are detoxified and excreted or converted to non-toxic active metabolites. In the dynamic phase, a toxicant interacts in cells, tissues, or organs in the body and leads to various types of toxic effects. The dynamic phase comprises primary reactions with the receptor or target organ, biochemical effects, and changes in behavioral and physiological response. The immediate and readily observable manifestation of poisoning is changes in temperature, pulse rate, respiration, blood pressure. Central nervous system poisoning may be manifested by convulsion, paralysis, hallucination, and ataxia. The chronic responses to toxicant exposure are mutations, cancer, birth defect, and effects on immune system. Bioaccumulation and biomagnification. Bioaccumulation is the selective absorption and storage of great variety of molecules inside the cell. Biomagnification is the tendency of some chemicals to become increasingly concentrated at successive higher trophic level of a food chain or food web. Due to this process, toxic compounds which are low in concentrations in the environment can reach to dangerous level inside cell and tissue of living organisms. The figure explains the biomagnification of toxins in the food chain of a terrestrial environment. The dots represent the organic molecules present in each trophic level. The crosses represent the toxin present in each trophic level. The black dots remain relatively constant in each individual, while the concentration of crosses becomes greater in each preceding trophic level. The concentration system is due to persistence of the toxins, food chain energetics, and low rate of internal degradation or excretion of the substance. Trophic level 1 represents the primary producers, trophic level 2 represents the primary consumers, trophic level 3 represents the secondary consumers, trophic level 4 represents the tertiary consumers. The polychlorinated biphenyl compounds are group of man-made chemicals which are similar to DDT in their extreme stability. These are introduced in 1920 and are extremely toxic compounds which originate in a great variety of manufacturing process like manufacturing of glass, electric transformers, inks, carbonless copy papers, grinding wheels, fire-resistant coating to wood and plastics, tires, plastic coating and many more. PCB can affect the immune system, fertility, child development and increase the risk of certain cancer. Because of the extreme toxicity, the accepted level of PCB in fish to be eaten is only 2 ppm. In higher concentration, it causes death. The biological manifestation of PCB in Great Lakes region of United States is shown in the figure. So students, let us summarize what we have learned in this module. The chemicals present in the environment can be harmful to the structure and function of the ecosystem. These chemicals are either produced naturally or artificially by humans. The toxicity can be categorized as acute toxicity, which occurs as a result of single exposure to a chemicals which immediately show its harmful effect, and other is chronic toxicity, which occurs due to prolonged exposure of sublethal dose. The dose-response relationship is used to examine the time-dependent effect of exogenous and endogenous chemicals and physical agents. There are a number of ways through which toxicants adversely affect living organisms. Toxins that are specifically causes abnormalities during embryonic growth and development are called as teratogens. Thalidomide is the most commonly known teratogen. There are number of chemicals in the environment which are carcinogenic. It includes synthetic chemicals, radiations, air pollutants, heavy metals, smoking, etc. Mutagens are agents such as chemicals and radiations which causes sudden and permanent changes in the genetic material of living organisms. Certain chemicals act as allergens that activate the immune system. Formaldehyde is one of the most common examples. Toxins, when absorbed in the body, are metabolized, transported, or excreted. During the metabolic process, they have adverse biochemical effects. These processes are characterized by kinetic phase and a dynamic phase. There are certain chemicals in the environment which have the tendency to become increasingly concentrated as successive trophic levels of a food chain or food web. This is known as biomagnification. Due to this process, toxic compounds reaches to dangerous level inside cell and tissue of living organisms. The effect of DDT, PCB, heavy metals and radioactive materials get magnified through the food webs. Thank you.